Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota, dressed like Elton John, and this is why they call it the Blues.
And I'm Luke Braun. I'm the king of sadness. Welcome to the Minnesota football party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota football party.
Well, where do we go from here? Sam Ekstrom and Luke Braun talking Vikings football on the Monday edition of the Minnesota football party on Halloween Eve. Braun is a king. I am a musical legend. For those on YouTube, this is what we look like in costume. For those on audio, you can check us out on YouTube at Locked On Sports Minnesota channel. Hear us.
For those on audio, this crown's going to last about 2 minutes. This is driving me insane.
It doesn't look like a very
you're not missing much. It does not fit me properly. It's already over. Now I'm just a sad guy in a robe.
So I'm just gonna be the guy with the button down and the orange glasses.
It doesn't not work in a life of the party kind of way,
Right. Yeah, like if I was just going to a general party, not on Halloween, this could
like
play.
if I walked into a place and I saw you, I wouldn't be like, that guy's in a costume. I'd be like, that guy's
right. Now you talk to me and realize I don't have the charisma to pull this off. But if you didn't know me, I could fool you just by the appearance. It feels like one of those sitcom bits where they'll set something up. The Office did this a lot, where you're having like a party or a costume party or some kind of festive time, but the subplot is you're also trying to solve some like deep-rooted issue while you're in this like very different
silly outfits
setting. Yeah, silly outfits. That's what today is. Silly outfits, talking about the potential end of the Kirk Cousins era, the potential end of the Vikings 2023 hopes. I'm getting a call, probably from a robot.
A robot named Arif Hassan saying, hello, I woke up.
Yeah. Join us, please, Arif. Maybe he's doing last-second work on his costume. But
that's a horrifying thought. Happy Halloween.
The Kirk Cousins injury, torn Achilles, out for the year, casts a pall on what was otherwise a scintillating Vikings performance, a third straight win, everything coming together, a 2-touchdown lead, and then that happens. And completely changes the complexion of the season with 9 games to go. And if you missed it, Locked On Vikings postcast, we had the absolute most instant reaction, and you can still go back and check that out. Now we've had about 20 hours to process it further. Where are you at 20 hours later, Luke, with the ramifications of this injury?
It's been weird. I don't think it's hit me emotionally in the same way it's hit a lot of people. Like a lot of people are just like mourning that the season is over. A lot of really big Kirk Cousins fans are just really sad about that. And I think for me, my brain immediately goes to a curious place, like to what happens next kind of place. And it's been my entire career covering the Vikings, or at least my entire time on Locked On Vikings, has been Kirk Cousins, right? Covering Kirk Cousins. And so the idea of, okay, we have a new starting quarterback that we're going to evaluate. Right now, kind of there's nothing they can do about it. The first guy who gets a crack at winning this job is Jaren Hall. Before the Vikings are going to be able, even if they do trade for a guy, he ain't starting right away. He's going to have to learn the playbook. He's going to have to sit for a week or two. So this is Jaren Hall's show. And if they don't do anything at the trade deadline, it's Jaren Hall's show for 9 games now. And he gets a chance, regardless of what you think of his opportunity, or of what you think he'll make of this chance. He does have an opportunity to go ball out and convince the Vikings that they don't need to go crazy for a quarterback. I'm your guy, right? Will he do that? I don't think so. I don't think he's going to be that good. I think he's a backup quality dude, and that's why I was excited to get him. But like, who knows, right? What if he comes out and he just like Purdy's this and wins 9 straight and the Vikings are in the playoffs, right? And you go, oh my God, this dude's the dude. We've certainly seen guys picked lower do that last year. So it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
Every bad thing that happens in football, like football is very zero sum on the roster. That's the other thing. Like everything, like when something bad happens, it's awful and it's sorrowful and it's, we all, I mean, we're all gutted for Kirk Cousins. We all saw how sad that locker room was, how sad Kevin O'Connell was. And I think that it is absolutely valid for people who are just grieving. A lot of people are just grieving. They're just sad, and that's okay. Good even. But that represents maybe the best thing that ever happened to Jaren Hall because it's the opportunity of a lifetime. Zero sum. It makes it complicated.
Yeah, you're not wrong. There's so much to think about in the next 24 hours. And that'll reduce some of the questions we have, knowing which direction the Vikings opt to go here at the trade deadline. The fact that this happens 2 days pre-deadline just muddies the waters all the more and forces the decision to be made so much more quickly on whether they fortify that position. Here's where I'm at after sleeping on it. This is what I believe the Vikings will do. I believe the Vikings go with Jaren Hall against Atlanta. Sean Mannion elevated to the backup.
Mm-hmm.
Jaren Hall, as long as he performs like an adequate backup quarterback, I think gets the nod. But I think Nick Mullins, who's on IR right now, back injury, when healthy, becomes the quick go-to if Jaren Hall does not look ready. Because I think the team is going to hold on, like particularly from the coach, the players, the coaching staff. They're not going to mail in the season for the sake of seeing Jaren Hall at 4-4. If it was 2-6, it'd be different.
No, he has to show you something for sure.
Yep. But I think he gets because of Mullins' injury, you actually get this cool opportunity where you don't really have to choose. You give it to Hall and then ride it out and see if it's worth riding further and deeper into the season. And then you make the switch to the veteran, who I thought conducted himself pretty adequately in the preseason. What do you think of my take? It's a very this is not an inspiring take. This is not going to get
very
responsible.
Yeah,
I like think it's most likely. This is not hot take. Yeah. Very lukewarm. What do you think?
Look, I like it. If you want to make money on the stock market, you don't go for the crazy Jim Cramer invest all your life savings into this stock. No. You just go buy the Dow. That's the just go get the easy, the S&P 500 and you take your 1.5% a year. That's a nice, responsible way to think about it. And I think you got it right with look, Jaren Hall gets the nod because he has to, right? To begin, which means he has an opportunity to outplay Nick Mullins. He did not outplay Nick Mullins in the preseason and in camp, right? He didn't win that job. But it has been a couple months. And yeah, the circumstances are different. There is no curiosity around Nick Mullins. They know what they have in Nick Mullins. We've seen him. But we haven't seen Jaren Hall in any live game action except for the last couple of possessions in that Packers game. So we haven't seen enough of him yet. And they'll get enough of a sample to make a true decision. But yeah, I don't think it's going to take a lot from Jaren Hall. I don't think it's going to take a perfect game. I think you just need to show enough to say, okay, playing this guy isn't suicidal. That's what it needs to be. It needs to be just it. We can be taken seriously with this guy. Are we going to win every game? Probably not. And that's not, I mean, we're not going to, we were looking at the schedule and saying, gosh, look at all these we're probably going to lose to half of these now. That's just the reality.
It's going to be frustrating. Brace for it.
It's going to be rough. And it's, and it might be a good learning experience for someone like Jaren Hall, who I don't think is a quarterback that needs to sit. That's not, it was never my evaluation on him. He's old already and he's very familiar with the system because they ran the same system at BYU. So he's not somebody that is who was the one that I really thought did need to just sit a year? I want to say it was Hainer or something. O'Connell, Aiden O'Connell. That was what it is. And he actually played. I might have been wrong about that, but he's not one of those guys that's this dude's so raw. He's just got to sit. I did think that about Mond. Yeah. Which turned out to be, I guess, prescient.
He needed to sit for a little longer.
Yeah. He needed to sit for a couple 3 years out. And then not get a job. But yeah, it'll be he'll get like a God's honest chance to take those reins. But yeah, a quick hook, perhaps, if you feel like, oh my God, he's spiraling. If we keep putting him out there, we're just going to like make him worse. I think that's where it is. Like if it's just this meltdown and you're like, oh my God, we cannot solidify this. We just got to yank him before it gets worse. Mullins go in. That's when I feel like that happens.
Yeah. The duty to the players and the weekly product versus duty to the long-term build is the key point of tension right now. And for the next couple days, what does kwesi-adofo-mensah do at the deadline?
Yeah.
Did the 2 wins the last 2 weeks, did that swing his decision? And then did the injury re-swing it back to where it was? Like where did the pendulum end up after all the dust settled? Because you've got competing variables that occurred just in the last 10 days.
Yeah, and you have the Wilfs of it all too. Like I think for them to be like full sellers at the deadline, they would have had to lose all 3 of these last ones. They would have had to lose to Chicago. They would have had to get killed by San Francisco. They would have to be coming off this bad loss in Lambeau. And then you'd be like, oh my God, this is a catastrophe season. Just like let it die. And everybody I think would have been a little more sympathetic to that. But honestly, once they beat Chicago, it was like, okay, we're 2-4. We're not doing this, right? We'll and then they pull off the upset and it's totally over. But yeah, then you get the injury. I don't think that they become sellers at the deadline to a great degree. I wouldn't be stunned to see them do what we've been talking about on this show with like, we'll flip Ezra Cleveland because we feel like we've got a guy. But they still have 9 games to play. And I was thinking about it. Today is the 21st anniversary of the infamous Herm Edwards "you play to win the game" rant.
Great poll.
I saw it on, it's like a This Day in Sports Clips account on Twitter or something like that, which is appropriate because that rant, he was asked, those Jets were 2-5, and they were asked, do you have to talk to your team about not giving up on the season? And he just went off on that. He's like, give up on the season? Are you kidding me? No, you show up and you play to win. We don't care about our standings. We don't care about where we are. We don't care about our outlook. We don't care about our draft position. You show up, you fly out, you get up at 4 a.m. to go play a football game, and they've still got 9 games to go. And I know the deal is like with GMs, GMs can tank. But GMs don't tank by making the team bad on purpose. They tear down and rebuild and try to convert things into liquid assets. And then maybe the roster gets bad in the meantime as a byproduct. But they don't get bad on purpose for like draft picks. And so once you're in the season, the roster is what the roster is, right? You can make a little bit of a trade deadline thing here or there, but they built the roster by and large in the draft and in March. That's when the roster gets really built. And it is what it is. Those guys are going to go fly out to Atlanta, and they're going to play the Atlanta Falcons. And guess what? They're going to do everything in their power, scrape, claw, cry, sweat, bleed, try to win the game.
Yeah. And the ship has sailed on getting a top 10 pick, I think. So
unless at that point, QB situation is very bad and they have won their last game of the year.
Yeah. At that point, it's it really is gravy if you're picking, between 11 and 19, I think. And that could be where the Vikings end up here. You may have to put to bed the grand notions of rattling off 8 wins in a row. I know they've got 3. But you could still get to 7-7 pretty easily with a backup, with a chance to go upset the Lions and make a wild card spot.
Yeah,
playoffs, the playoff dream is not dead. Takes a hit. But, I want to talk more specifically about Kirk Cousins, and then maybe we'll circle back to the here and now. But the Kirk ripple effects are, jarring for what it means for him, for his future in the NFL with the Vikings, his free agency. There's so much to think about. Mind is racing. So we'll get into that after a word from eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft, scouting the waiver wire, every week, we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. So here's my fantasy pick of the week. And when I say the week, I mean tonight, Monday night. Do you have a matchup where you need just a few points or you need to have a big performance to win? I think Jahmyr Gibbs is the play. I've got Jahmyr Gibbs on one of my fantasy teams. He's coming off a 27-point performance, albeit in a blowout loss against Baltimore. But Detroit is missing David Montgomery. Former Gopher Mo Ibrahim is injured. They're thin at running back. Jahmyr Gibbs is the exciting rookie. He's been getting more and more touches. I think Jahmyr Gibbs has to be the play as Detroit goes against Las Vegas tonight on Monday Night Football. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs. eBay Motors has it, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. All right, Kirko Chains is out for the year. Achilles injury at age 35, heading into free agency.
Did the MRI get confirmed this morning? Did I miss that when I was still asleep?
I've been operating in a speculative mode since the injury occurred. I am, and as a journalist, I should say that I have not seen a confirmation on the MRI.
Okay,
but I'm also not holding out a lot
formality. Yeah.
That is a formality.
The whispers Schefter said like it's a tear. Like they know, they can know on the sideline. You can mess with the muscle and see that it's unstable.
Correct. The video was really all I needed to see. One replay.
Yeah,
that's all.
Pretty obvious. But I was just curious because I out for the year. Achilles.
O'Connell speaks later today. I'm sure he'll lead with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it might even leak, to Tom Pelissero, Adam Schefter prior to that.
Maybe.
So we've talked about the ripple effects on the last 9 games of the Vikings season. Trade deadline, obviously. But I brought this up on the postcast yesterday. What does it do to free agency, Kirk? And I think this actually increases the likelihood that Kirk Cousins could be a Viking in 2024. I'm not saying it's better than 50%, but I think you are paying him $28 million dead next year anyway.
Yeah.
If he is suddenly in a 1-year prove it mode where the market's cool on him, obviously in March, he's still going to be in rehab mode, not going to be able to pass a physical. At age almost 36 at that point, teams might be a little more gun shy to give him multiple years. If you're paying him 28 anyway, and you can get him for 35 to 40 for 1 year, how much sense does that make? You can still draft a first-round quarterback and have him sit. I think it increases the likelihood that he's a Viking. What's your take on that?
So contract-wise, if that happens, it would actually, there's a chance that it would actually not really add too much onto that 28 mil that's already kind of earmarked. It would move a bunch of it because of the way that void years work. So Cousins has 4 void years on his contract. If you give him an extension that occupies one of those void years, so let's say you give him a 1-year deal in 2024 for, I don't know, let's say 20 million because he's coming off an Achilles and he's older or whatever. Let's just say that that's the number, just to say a number. 2025, 2026, and 2027 all have prorated bonus amounts from various restructures that are like earmarked for those years. But when his contract voids, it all accelerates. You pay it all at once. That's where the 28.5 comes from. So those last 3 years worth, what is earmarked for those years is about 18 mil of it, 18.25 million of it. That would then get paid in 2025 as a dead cap hit. So now your dead cap from Kirk Cousins leaving would be 18.5 instead of, or 18.25 instead of 28.5. And then in 2024, the other 10.25 still counts as like dead cap or whatever. And then you add the 20 million, he would cost 30 million instead of 28.5. So you haven't really added that. You've added like 2.5 million in terms of cap. The rest of the dead cap gets spread out into 2025, where it's a way more manageable hit. 18.5 with how big the cap will be by then. That's no big deal at all. At least relatively for a, the quarterback quagmire that we've been in with that contract. And I think for a lot of people, the take is, well, yeah, Kirk's pretty good, but he's just too gosh darn expensive. That does kind of solve that if you're okay with it. Now, I don't really subscribe to that. I have more problem, like my problem with Kirk as a card carrying Kirk hater has been more about the on-field product and the consistency of it. The idea of, you can't go a season without a couple of games like what he did versus, who was it where he just had a total dreadful game this year? Was it the Bucks? No.
Bucks, he was pretty good. The wins against the Bears and Panthers were probably his worst games.
I'm thinking the Eagles last year. That's what it was. Because he was great against the Eagles this year. But you'll have some of those just where, man, he just doesn't have a good one. You'll have a bunch of those over the course of the season. And, you can't get through 4 of those in a row in the playoffs without him having a stinker. That's kind of the way I felt about it. So all of that said, for me, the money isn't an issue, but if for you, the only issue is the money, that's actually a pretty good looking package for a quarterback, as long as you trust that guy to be the guy.
And I think if they've got if they have a first round pick in the holster as well, you could feel really good about shelling out for 1 year, having your future in the building. And yeah, a little awkward for Kirk to finally have that guy over his shoulder, but 36 years old, what do you expect? I mean, that I think would give more finality to his career. It would provide a really good mentor in terms of work habits for the future guy.
Sure.
And this is under the assumption,
now you can sit a rookie for a year. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is, of course, assuming that it's not Jaren Hall, and that's going to play out over the next 9 weeks, perhaps. But I'm curious what the hit is to his market now, because I would have guessed maybe a 2-year deal at pretty good QB money in pure free agency. And I got to think that just took a big hit. So that's why I'm thinking it's more realistic to come back to Minnesota.
Yeah, and 20 would be a pretty big hit to that, because the deal that was reported that the Vikings turned down in the summer was barely under 40 for like 3 years. So if you're talking 1 year 20, that's pretty devastating.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong about that. So that's another thing that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about the deadline, and I'm thinking about the final 9 games. And Luke, the Vikings played really well yesterday. So why don't we talk about the actual game? 24-10 Vikings win. Offensive line, once again, very good in protection. Pass catchers all delivered. Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, KJ Osborne, big days all around. Jordan Addison's good, man. I mean, and that's another one of the teases. Why do the quarterbacks always have to get hurt when they are showing their best stuff? Teddy Bridgewater, other example. But Kirk dishing it to Addison, dishing it to Hawkinson, dishing it to Osborne, and Jefferson on the verge of joining Addison with Kirk firing on all cylinders. That's going to be a what could have been kind of thing.
It will. I think with Kirk, it's important to remember it never lasts, good or bad. It never lasts. I have been saying that on Locked On Vikings for 5.5 years now. Of, man, he's really playing poorly. What do we do? Just ride it out. It never lasts. He'll get better. Hey, he's playing great. This is awesome. Enjoy it now. It never lasts. The roller coaster goes down too. So it's hard for me to look at that and say, wow, they would have just like absolutely been, super consistent for the first time ever. Like, that's just not the Vikings. It's not the Vikings under O'Connell. It wasn't under Zimmer. It's not the Vikings. So that's not going to I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. And plus, I mean, this is what we get into, right? If you guys get injured and it ruins seasons, it happens every single year to someone. If you don't like it, go start following esports. Like, This is football.
The PFF grades are in. Kirk
Boy.
Cousins in possibly his final game as a Viking with a gaudy 90.1 grade. That's got to be one of his highest grades of all time. 90.1.
Source tells me you should look at who is third.
Who's third in what?
In grade on the offense. A little birdie told me.
I will check that in real time.
Okay. You just saw the tweet. I thought you were looking at the page.
Oh, Jaron Hall.
It's Jaron Hall. Apparently they like his 5 dropbacks.
In 11 snaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was quality. Let's take a look at Dalton Risner really fast, because we talked about this on the postcast. Again, another good day for the offensive line in pass pro. Run blocking was not good. Run game was bad, and that's going to get exposed more in a backup quarterback situation. If you can't run the ball, that's not going to be good. But O'Neal and offensive line did not grade actually particularly well here. 14 pressures allowed. And two sacks very late in that game. Yeah, pass blocking much better than run blocking, as we would have expected. Dalton Risner comports himself well. 3 pressures allowed, no sacks. Run blocking not good. But I mean, the pieces were in place. Offensive line, defense.
They had
improving.
a formula that was working there. Yeah, which is such a bummer. It feels to me, I don't know if you feel the same way, Sam, but it feels to me like this Packers game was a little bit of more of the Packers falling apart than the Vikings actually like doing anything particularly astounding. Like the penalties were insane. They let us out of 9 third and longs, 9 3rd and 8+. The Vikings converted, which great job, Kirk. Like credit, that's difficult to do, but oh my God, Packers.
Vikings have been weirdly sustainable about converting 3rd and longs. I feel like they did this last year too. I don't know. They
did do this last year. Yeah. They were like really explosive on 3rd downs.
Yeah. I mean, the Packers offense is a tire fire. Jordan Love is like, he's the one lighting the flame too. It's bad.
Yeah.
I didn't see the arm talent that I was told about. I was told you're going to see some throws that wow you. And I barely I saw him
the one falling down like across the body.
Oh yeah, the third down.
Cool.
Okay, that was cool. You're right.
It's like there's one, and you go look at this highlight, and if that's the only thing you saw from the game, you'd think he was doing fine. The part that kills me with it is the Packers had a chance absolutely to make this comeback after Kirk went down,
right?
Because you had the drive after Kirk went down, missed field goal, short field, Packers drive all the way down, and then they can't convert on the goal line. They miss out on 4th down. And then they get a fumble, and they get another chance. If they could have converted on either of those, and then if you think about that last Packers possession and all the deep balls that didn't go, you hit one of those, like that, one down the sideline, he's gone.
Yeah, LaFleur was prepared to go for 2, I'm sure, down 14, probably to pull within 6. That's what he does.
Sure.
So they could have, I was, I mean, obviously distracted by the Kirk injury, but I was concerned about that.
Yeah.
And not only that,
Love couldn't hit him.
The Packers almost failed 4 times from the 1. Like they almost didn't even get the first touchdown because they were so hapless in the red zone. How about Harrison Phillips making some plays, by the way, in short yardage?
Yeah. Oh man. But there was one where the Packers in the first drive where the Packers busted a run play. They just blocked the wrong guy and they let him go. And then like on the next play, or the next play that counted, I think they the wide receivers all blocked on what should have been like a pick play, and nobody ran a route. It's like, what is happening over there?
We're seeing in the last 3 years of the NFL how important a quarterback is to a head coach looking good. I mean, LaFleur is having to get up there after the game and fall on the sword week after week after week. but he doesn't have a good quarterback. It's pretty astonishing how that team looks right now. And
how about the Billy B discussion over in New England? They're starting to say the hot seat words.
Right after allegedly an extension was given, Sean Payton maybe saving a little face yesterday with the win, but that hasn't looked good at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another kind of informative thing. But here's a question for you. This is another sad one to think about. Is Brian Flores doing so well with this defense that are we headed toward a one and done? I don't think it's for sure. I don't think he's guaranteed to be gone. If this was an offensive coordinator, he would be. The demand for defensive coordinator head coaches is fairly low in the league. Like that's going to hurt him.
There's
the ongoing
baggage.
lawsuit, that's going to hurt him. Like knock him down a few percentage points. So he's probably not the preferred candidate in a lot of teams, but inevitably it only takes one. If there's 6 head coaching jobs, he's going to get interviewed probably by most of them.
Yep.
And odds are one team would pull the trigger. But talk me out of it. Talk me out of Brian Flores leaving after 1 year.
There is one factor you have not considered, which is what Brian Flores himself wants. Not that he necessarily, I'm sure he wants a head coach job more than he wants a DC job. I'm sure he's doing fine here in Minnesota, but I think we all understand that this is a stepping stone for him. He definitely knows that he gets one more shot at this, right? If you go take the first head coach job that comes a call-in and it's a dumpster fire and you get fired in 2 years, that's it. You're never going to be a head coach again. You do not get 3 chances in this league. So you have to be very, very judicious about what those head coaching opportunities are. Like if the Bears fire Eberflus, for one, I cannot imagine them going for another defensive person, but it's also Chicago. They kind of do that. And if they're okay with the baggage, which, hey, a lot of teams were last year and it was fresher. So I don't think that that's necessarily a deal breaker, but yeah, it might throw a wrench in things. But it needs to be a good opportunity. That's what it needs to be. And if a good opportunity comes a call in, then yes, I do think that Brian Flores will take it if it's offered to him. It's also the defense is okay. It is not one of the best defenses in the league. It's an okay defense. For us, the vibes of that are great because our defense was so bad last year that we're like, oh my God, it's like actually working again. And it's dunking on, bad quarterbacks. It's destroying Bryce Young and Justin Fields and Jordan Love, who all played horribly in those games. Did not do well against Patrick Mahomes. Did not do well against Justin Herbert at all. So I don't know if it necessarily has that reputation, but I think the biggest thing is he's not just going to take the first job. He's going to take something he feels is a good place to go be successful. Like if Dallas fired Mike McCarthy, that's a job I could see him taking. Where you go, this is a roster that's good. This is a team that's ready to compete right now. This ownership group does not have a quick hook with their head coaches, right? They stuck by Jason Garrett forever, right? Like that's where I could see Brian Flores going. One of those kinds of openings. I don't know.
He's got to feel super comfortable with ownership because he's probably got a little PTSD in that regard.
For sure. And it's political.
And doesn't want to be part of a tank job either. That got him in trouble too last time. It would have to be a Chargers team if they act stable, right?
The Chargers are great. Yeah. Yeah. Like the whole deal of it is you have like most teams that are rebuilding or most teams that are firing their head coaches are rebuilding, right? It's very rare that you get a team that fires its head coach, but also feels like it's competitive at the same time. And I like the Vikings were one of those openings that they still felt like they had a really good team and it was like just the head coach was just the problem. But more often than not, you get situations like Arizona where they're getting rid of Cliff Kingsbury and they got to bring in the new guy. I think if Brian Flores has his pick of the litter, he's going to be very, very judicious.
And they could also pay him more to make it worth his while. I am going to gloat after a word from our partners about my parlay victory, and we'll do a little look ahead to the Atlanta Falcons and what's next on the schedule. But, on the weekends, I get hungry. I do a lot of announcing work on Friday night, Saturday night. I get home, I'm hungry, I'm tired. I want something quick and delicious. This is where I go to DoorDash, the DoorDash app, and I get my favorite restaurant snacks, apps, entrees, my Shake Shack shakes, so delicious. You can also get groceries from DoorDash as well. And you can do it really, really fast because they are convenient. The app is intuitive. It's easy to use, and you get the best deals. Groceries, restaurants, retail as well, and plenty more. And you can get prepared for game day. Are you having a Vikings watch party to kick off the Jaren Hall era against Atlanta? Stock up on your favorite apps, order your tailgate food on DoorDash, then watch your team win. Here's the deal. Get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app, enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. That's 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23. Subject to change, terms apply. LOCK23 for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order. Sadly, Arif is not here because this would have been a really fun day to have him on, not only for, the Halloween hijinks, but also parlays. Remember, I triggered
my God, you doubled your winnings.
I doubled my winnings on a parlay yesterday that came down to the absolute wire. Cousins over 1.5 touchdowns hit, and then he got hurt.
Just in time, yeah.
And Seattle -3.5.
Wow.
Down 3. They drive the field. They score in the waning seconds. They make the extra point to win by 4. So a $300 parlay at plus 230 turns into $690 in profit times 2, a $1,380 day to launch me into first place. And my advantage also doubled Arif's losses. And he lost. He lost on Jordan Love going over his yardage in garbage time. So he goes down 160 buckaroos. So big swing in the old parlay contest.
Man, I'm falling away.
Oh my goodness. Who is this?
Oh, wow.
Garth?
Hey, where's Wayne? Wayne!
Look who finally figured out how to log into the World Wide Web.
What is this? The internet? Change? We fear change.
Oh,
boy.
We got about 5 minutes left, Garth. What do you make of the Atlanta Falcons on the schedule next with Taylor Heineke against possibly Jaren Hall?
Boy, Jaren Hall, first and foremost, I know there's a lot of back and forth between Mullins, Jaren Hall. Obviously, Mullins on the IR. What a great opportunity to fling Hall in here. I think you got to see what you got in him, right? Now's the time. You drafted him, obviously, for a reason. You obviously think he's got the tools, the talent, the mold, and develop. So I think this is a game you finally see what you got from him. I don't want to see them dumb down the offense too much. I think you can win with this guy. I think KOC and Wes Phillips need to kind of cater that game plan to him for sure, but still got one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. He's got weapons galore, especially when JJ gets back after this Atlanta game. His mobility is going to be a breath of fresh air. That you have to use to his asset as well. He delivers an accurate ball. He's got the arm strength. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, guys. First game after life without Kirk Cousins. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow, but life moves on. I don't want to reiterate or echo too much what I already missed from you guys, but I think today is a day of grieving for sure, but life goes on. Like Mike Zimmer said, the sun keeps rising, and these guys are going to go work their butts off to try to go win these games.
I would be stunned if there was a panic trade by Kwesi, like a Bradford type acquisition. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't see any type of, I don't see a lot of activity either way. I know earlier, I should say last night on Twitter, I saw a lot of fire sale. I think you got to pump the brakes on the fire sale stuff too. I think both sides of the trade fence. I don't see them making a ton of movement or activity. I was never in the camp of trading a guy like Danielle Hunter. I think, he's a foundational guy. And like Luke always says, you keep good players. I think just because he's a free agent next year doesn't mean you can't find a way to bring him back. I mean, he's spent his whole career here in Minnesota. What makes you think he doesn't want to retire a Viking? So unless there's a move that they were already going to make before Kirk, maybe let's just say trading Ezra Cleveland, then fine. You still trade Ezra Cleveland. You get your 5th rounder and you call it a day. Maybe add a little bit more ammo to the draft and you move on. But I see no trade as far as fire sale coming, not with a 4-4 record. Not in the middle of this playoff seeding, weak NFC North, not after winning 3 straight without JJ, not while your offensive line's playing great, not while the defense has gotten better each week. I don't see a lot of activity coming. I think we got to buckle up and just understand that I think we're I guess on schedule for a lot of Nick Mullins and Jaren Hall for this last half of the schedule here. And that's just how it's going to be. Get ready for a lot of maybe potentially ugly, 17-13 games, because I think that's just the blueprint now from here on out and how they're going to have to win.
Luke, Vikings, Falcons, early thoughts might be Heineke on the other side.
Man, this is going to be rough. I looked at the schedule for the games. There's like 4 incredible blockbuster games. I'm very glad that most of the nation does not have to be exposed to this. I would like this game to play out mostly in private. I honestly, like, the only thing in my brain is let's see how Jaren Hall looks. Win or lose is just kind of this back afterburner thing now. Like, let's just see how this dude is. Let's see what we got in this kid. I liked him coming out as a mid-round dude. I thought they got him later than that. I liked what he did in the preseason, which you can find all those breakdowns on my Patreon, which are all free, by the way, so you don't even have to join if you don't want to. Let's see what he can do in a game, man. I'm stoked on that, and it's a pretty tough defense, no?
Yeah, I got to do a lot of
defense. They got whooped up on Will Levis yesterday, kind of out of the blue, very uncharacteristic. 4 touchdowns from Levis. You wonder how much of that was just some YOLO balls to DeAndre Hopkins. But outside of last week, Atlanta's defense taking a huge turn from last year. Last year, they were dead last in sacks in the NFL. They didn't really add anybody on defense. If you go back and look at their offseason, a couple of free agent pieces. They did lose Grady Jarrett yesterday to a torn ACL at defensive tackle. But in the draft, they went offense. B. John Robinson, they kind of went all in on that running game in the offense. So the defense, props to them. They have gotten better. I know Jeremy Bates from Cincinnati, the safety, has played really lights out. Jesse Bates, but I don't know how they did it. We're going to have to go kind of dive into the tape this week and see what the catalyst has been for their turnaround. But yeah, Atlanta's D, not bad. Not as bad as they were last year by any means.
We got to roll. Thank you, gentlemen. That was a sad show. We processed a lot. I think it was good therapy. And we'll do it again on Thursday with Arif Hassan and Ron Johnson joining us on the Minnesota Football Party. You can find this on the Locked On Vikings audio feed or the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. Also find the 24/7 live stream there as well. I fired it up last night, and Luke Braun was on there. Locked On Vikings. It's a constant loop. Vikings, Wolves, Wild, Gophers, Twins on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, other Luke. And a happy Halloween to everybody.